Hello and welcome to another edition of the FLABOTA podcast hosted by the Fort Lauderdale chapter of ABOTA. I am FLABOTA President Jeff Adelman. Today we have a fascinating topic today that's been in the news, so much so that this is the second podcast / interview that we have done concerning this subject because we're hearing about it more and more every day and learning more of the pitfalls and good things that AI can bring to light in litigation. So today, to give us more about AI and the practical uses of AI in litigation is biomechanical engineer Alexandra Maddox of CED Technologies. Alexandra, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
I want to thank our sponsor, Trilogy Trial Consultants, for research, exhibits, and presentations, and unparalleled visual strategy and trial presentation. Trilogy Trial Consultants, you can reach them at 813-995-8880, trilogytrial.com. And we thank them for all their help with this show, in particular with all the editing work and making all of us look good. So thank you, Trilogy Trial Consultants. Well, Alexandra, I wanted to have you on the show because we heard from Professor Guerin a few months ago from Nova about AI. Now, you are an expert in terms of using AI in the litigation process. So I thought that maybe you could help us understand how we could use it in our practices. But before we go there, can you tell us a little bit about CED Technologies and also just about your background?
Absolutely. CED Technologies, we're a forensic engineering firm. So we have a whole background of engineers who work in insurance and litigation, even just in some consulting matters. My background and the work I do here is as a biomechanical engineer. Um, and my introduction to AI started in my PhD research. So that's sort of where I was introduced, where I started using it. My PhD research used a lot of video analysis and video techniques to characterize tissue biomechanics and flow fields. Um, and with any image processing, it can get kind of heavy-handed. And what I mean by image processing is essentially cleaning up images, improving the quality of images. And so AI became and was introduced as sort of this tool that could be used to improve that process, make that process faster and more effective. So that's where all of this sort of started. I also did some work as a postdoc with the University of Maryland at Arliss, which is an affiliated research center. So it's sort of a bridge between government needs and academia. And in that role, part of it was vetting AI tools that the State Department would potentially use in voice recognition or in facial detection. So AI is this, ever expanding, very robust kind of umbrella term. And because it can be used in all of these different applications, they're sometimes a little bit lost in the weeds, and it can be a little bit scary because there's not so much understanding about it. And in my casework and in my role now, a lot of what I'm doing is dealing with surveillance footage. And for, whatever reason, surveillance footage is often very grainy, low quality, it can be really pixelated, but it holds a lot of really valuable information. And it's really, objective facts that can be used and presented in a case if you can extract things from it. But when it's that low quality, we need to enhance it. So one of the ways to enhance it, bridging back to that PhD work, is using AI. And so that's what I kind of want to talk about today, because in my experience, when I've brought it up as using it as an image enhancing tool, there's been a lot of, whoa, AI seems very scary. We don't know if we'll be able to get that admitted as evidence, because what we associate AI with is artificially generated images as opposed to an image improvement, which is really where I think it can be of great value in litigation.
And I understand you have some examples that you can show our members about how you've used AI in certain cases. Would you mind showing us that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, uh, which I may need your permission for.
Uh-oh, did I not do that? I did it.
Oh, it's right there. There's a giant green button on it. These glasses, you'd think.
Okay.
All right, so let me put this in a full screen mode and go back to the start, which would be helpful. So as I've talked about, I use surveillance a lot in my casework. I've used it in plaintiff cases and defense cases, and I've used it in a whole type of cases. I've used it in construction cases, vehicle collisions where there's dash cam footage, slip and falls, trip and falls. You can use it to extract speeds of vehicles, how fast people are moving, get an idea of where people are looking, tie together sequences of events. So in construction cases, the truss fell. What was the plaintiff doing at the time? Was he contributing to the truss falling? How can we link up his motions to that? In vehicle collisions, you can use it to get vehicle speeds, get an idea of, was this person driving in a parkway going 20 miles an hour over the speed limit? Were they going the speed limit? So there's all of this information in surveillance video. But if the surveillance video quality isn't good, a lot of the time there's two concerns. One, the quality of the information that we're extracting, but even if we're able to get good information, there's also a concern that if we show grainy, not great quality footage to a jury, that they're going to go, oh, how much can we believe this? And so using traditional image processing tools, especially when you have pixelation or blurriness, can be very heavy-handed. It takes a lot of time. Great outcomes aren't guaranteed. And so one of the things that we can use is AI. Now, as I mentioned before, kind of what we think of with AI is these AI auto-generated images. And there's, people will get AI profile pictures, submit a bunch of pictures of themselves, and an AI auto-generated image of a airbrushed best version of themselves gets spit out. There's a funny trend where people will go into ChatGPT and say, make me a spicy bowl of ramen, make it more spicy, more spicy. And so it'll kind of like create these images that aren't real. And so that's sometimes what people think of. And I think that's what a judge, a jury, other lawyers may think of when we start throwing around the terms AI in relation to images. In Photoshop, there's now AI fill in the background. So you can take the image on the left and auto-generate the rest of that image. It'll automatically fill it in. So there's really cool things being done in the AI image space, but that's not what I'm talking about. Because obviously, if it's not real, we can't use that as an exhibit at trial.
Sure.
That's not helpful for us. But what we can use it for is as an enhancement tool. And I think the big thing here is that you can get better results in a lot less time. And if I'm spending less time having to go through and filter and process and try to improve the images, that's a lower cost for the client, which is great. We love, if you can get better results at lower cost, that's win-win. And so this is an example that I have of a case where it was a bus accident. And the footage was from 10 years prior. Because it was a minor, the statute of limitations was different. And, now the incident occurred when the plaintiff was around 10 years old, and now the lawsuit is coming up when she's 17. And so a lot of time has passed between this footage and the incident. We can't inspect the vehicles. There's, really no evidence left other than the surveillance footage on the bus. And the allegation in this case was that the plaintiff had experienced a very serious concussion. But what we saw in the medical records is that she stated she didn't hit her head. And when you first look at this video, so this is the plaintiff is here in the white hat.
Okay.
We see that, you know, they're making a turn, bus accident, the kids go flying, and it's kind of unclear what's happening. So some of it is just using surveillance video in the traditional way, breaking it down, looking at it frame by frame, trying to get whatever information we can. And this was one where we were able to get a lot of information even just from the grainy surveillance video. But we wanted to see if we could get rid of some of the noise in the data that was extracted. And for engineers, noise just means some of those jitters and bumps and errors in your calculations that are coming from the pixelated image quality. So in this, I'm trying to track how fast her head is moving back and forth. And when the hat is all pixelated at the edges and you have those little bumps and ridges, it gets harder to pinpoint exactly where the edge of the head is. And then the other concern was if we showed this to a jury, they would say, how well can we rely on this? So we wanted to try to clean it up. And so this is what with an AI, let's go to, this is what we got with an AI image filter. So there's some weird things going on through the window, but the plaintiff himself, especially around the hat, is a lot smoother and cleaner. And so we were able to get a better trajectory of the motions to look at how she was moving in this bus accident. We were able to show that she puts her hand up to stop herself from hitting the window, or at the very least slow her descent. And ultimately, this was a case because of how much time had passed and because of the claims of the plaintiff was a very high cost case. And ultimately, because of the work on the surveillance video, we were able to get it to settle. And a big push of that was improving the quality of this image and really showing all the information that was there.
Yeah, I was going to ask you if we could see it again and you could maybe point out where the hand is.
Yeah, so I'll have to pull out from the presentation because I don't have that. But well, actually, let's just go. We'll go to let's see if we can get it just by clicking through.
Yeah.
So here's where she's coming in. There you can it's the frame right before this. So you can see her arm is coming up.
Yes, yes,
Right
I
there.
see it. Okay.
And so, and then in the next frame is where it's sliding down here. And this is actually an example of, in this case, it's actually a little clearer on the other one because there's some noise in the image at the window. But in the motion of the tracking of her head, we found that the peak accelerations that she experienced were in line with heading a soccer ball, and she was a soccer player. And so there were things that we could point to say that, you know, these are in line with the forces and motions that she would have experienced. It wouldn't be expected that she would have a severe concussion with lifelong injuries. And this is where you can kind of see, you know, the pixelation at the edge of the hat. Because what I did here is I essentially traced the outline of the hat and tracked its motion. And so this is getting a little in the weeds of engineering, but one of the ways you can do that effectively, as opposed to me going through and clicking, is use image thresholding to threshold the difference between the hat and the background. And when you have clearer lines around it, you can get a better threshold between the hat and its background environment and clearly pick up the whole hat. So here I was having to go in point by point and select and trace the whole outline. Here I was able to auto detect where the hat is and track its motion, which is another, you know, benefit, is that then it's less on me, am I being biased and where I'm selecting things. It's auto detected. It's not my hand selecting things. It is truly identifying where the hat is in the image.
So in this particular case, though, the fact that she got her hand up means that she hit her arm rather than hitting against the window. And that's what you were trying to prove here?
Yeah, and so that, well, there's two facts, because, you know, when you have head injuries, you don't necessarily have to hit your head. And so that was what they were having the medical experts say is you don't have to hit your head to have a concussion, which is true, but
Sure.
you still have to have motions at the head significant enough to cause the skull to, have accelerations great enough that your brain is coming into contact, it's pushing through that fluid barrier that you have around, that protective fluid barrier that sort of protects the brain, and it's impacting with the skull. And so we wanted to show not only is the hand not coming up, or is the hand coming up and stopping her from hitting her head, but also that in this back and forth motion, the speeds and accelerations that she is moving at are not that significant, and they weren't. And when you look at this as a video, and even when I first looked at this, I was like, I don't know, this could be not great. It's something where if you were to just show this to a jury without pulling out all of the data that we have there and comparing it to activities of daily living, sports activities, really characterizing what it is. If we were just to subjectively look at this and say, does this look bad or not? It does kind of look bad. But then once we objectively look at it and quantify things and characterize the forces, then it starts becoming a completely different picture of what's actually going on.
Sure. And just to be clear, the left is the raw footage and the right is the AI enhanced footage.
Yeah. And so I would say this case was about a year ago. And so in that time, AI is already coming a long way. We're making leaps and bounds. And so this is from a model that I'm now working to adapt and incorporate into my work. And the great thing about AI is that because it's so new and because there's so many researchers and people developing it, a lot of this is open source and openly available to people who are engineers who have, some solid coding experience, which I wouldn't even consider myself an expert coder, but it's incorporated in the research I've done. I've done enough coding that I can take people's models, understand what they're saying. They all publish papers if they develop something new. So you have an understanding of what's going on, how they're training the models. So if questions come up, I can answer those. I have an understanding. I'm not at the level to develop it myself, but I have enough knowledge to understand what's happening and incorporate it and use it on my own. So like in an example here, on the left is the raw image. So if we were to take a raw blurry image, and they're kind of highlighting 2 points where you can really see some details of how blurry it is. And then this is just kind of conventional de-blurring practices that people would use, a little more commonplace. And you can see that, this is what we're working with before. It gets things a little less blurry. It's a little bit clearer, but it's not great. This is more comparable to that model I used in the video. And we see a lot of improvement from this second one to this third one. But now we have even newer AI image enhancement models, which get us to this point. So it's on an upward trajectory. Everything is improving. And even from the time that they publish this paper, they're posting on that code source of, here's a new data set that we use to train that gets rid of this problem. Here's a new data set that we've trained that you can use if you have black and white images. It's going to be better with this data set. And so there's all of these ever expanding new tools coming up. And so it's, to me, I think all of the signs are there that we're going to be seeing this more and more. And it's going to be bleeding in from that research space and academia and into litigation, business, all of these different avenues as a tool that becomes a lot more commonplace. So understanding how we can use it to our benefit and why we don't always have to have that alarms and concerns with AI, because it's not always an artificially generated something. Sometimes it's just enhancing what's there or using techniques that we've been using for a long time in image processing and just making them that much better.
Gotcha. Well, I appreciate you showing us all those, Alexandra. Do you have any other examples, or is this what you have?
That's the best example I have with me today. And
Mhm.
because really a lot of this is new in this line of work for me as well. And
Sure.
so, as these cases come up, I've gotten pushback by quite a few lawyers. We don't want to do that. We don't think it'll be admissible at trial. And so that's a big reason where I think this podcast will be beneficial and important is to kind of remove some of that apprehension and concern around using AI.
That's exactly where I was going to go next, because obviously, from my perspective and my fellow litigants, what have judges said about this technology in your experience, and what has been the focus of the attorneys you've worked on to get these admitted?
So as I meant, the case that I had, and the reason I wanted to show that example is because that's the only one I've had that's gotten to a judge. And had
Okay.
ultimately the case settled, it didn't go to trial, but a judge gave us the okay to use that. But we had to show them, here's the original, here's what it is modified, here's what we extracted from the first one, here's what we extracted from the AI modified, to kind of prove and support that we weren't creating something new. We weren't artificially introducing new information that wasn't there previously. We were just improving what already existed. And, with the other cases that I've had, it hasn't even gotten to the judge. The lawyers themselves have said, oh, I don't think we want to do that. And so, I think this is one where, just being aware that we can still get a lot from the raw, but I would like to see more of at least having judges kind of giving their opinions, starting to get these admitted as exhibits in trial, because, we've got to push the door open still a little bit on all of this.
Absolutely. And then the examples that you showed us, you can see that there's only clarity being used for AI. It did not look manipulated or anything like that.
Yeah. And honestly, with all of the way that I've been using this most frequently in my work is because there is the apprehension of, well, we don't know if we want to use AI as a trial exhibit. There's skepticism around that. I don't know. But to see, is it worthwhile to go through the heavy-handed image processing? Is there potential to get this image to a better place? Are we going to be able to get valuable information out of this video? If we have a grainy, not great quality, let's do a quick pass with AI and see what is there to even see in this video. And if it seems like, oh, there's something there, it's going to be promising, then we'll use the more conventional methods, because that won't get us, uh, we know we'll be able to get that admitted in court.
Well, here's an important question, Alexandra. Um, this is all fascinating. I'm intrigued. I'm sure our viewers are as well. But how expensive is it?
Again, it's honestly less expensive. That's what's crazy about all this is, you know, I consider coding and developing this stuff is not something that I charge the client for. I have these already pre-developed. I'm adopting codes from other people and implementing them into a coding system. And so really the time it costs for video and image analysis is the time I spend doing it. So how much time does it take me to go through, extract frames, mask things if needed? So if I do conventional image processing on a 30-second video clip, depending on how much we're trying to get out, it can be anywhere from 4 to 8 hours of work to get it to a point where it looks good, and we've gone through and broken things down and gotten the information that we need. And that's a reasonable cost. It's a reasonable amount of time. Whereas with this AI, it's more on the end of 1 to 2 hours of work. It's a lot less time, because when you're going through and working with images, if you have a blurry image, there's a lot of reasons the image can be blurry. It can be because of movement, it can be because of the pixelation and resolution of the image. You can have, and then there are a whole slew of techniques you can use to improve the image. So going through all of these different iterations, trying to work with the color thresholds, trying to work with all these different things and interpolating and all of the traditional image processing techniques takes a lot of time. Whereas with these AI, that's essentially what the AI tools that I'm using are doing, is they are taking a set of images and artificially manipulating them. And it's saying, we know here's all of these kind of conventional methods that you can use to improve this image. And it's training a model to look at an image and say, here's the combination of techniques to use to get it back to its original point. It's a very oversimplification of what's happening, but it's essentially training a model to do what I do faster. And so there's nothing new or crazy that's being introduced. It's just the efficacy. And so more effective, less time, lower cost.
Makes sense. Well, this has been a very enlightening conversation. Alexandra, is there anything you would like to add to close this out? Something maybe we haven't talked about that you think might be important?
I think just final closing thoughts. The main takeaway for me in all of this is have somebody who knows how to work with videos. There's so much information in surveillance videos that maybe to a non-engineer, to a layman, it may get overlooked or not thought of. I have had cases make or break by surveillance video. It can truly be pivotal. And so getting that surveillance video to the best quality of possible, AI is one of the tools we can use to do that. And so hopefully, as we move forward, there's going to be a little less fear and apprehension around using it just more commonly.
Alexandra, if people want to get in touch with you at CED Technologies, can you tell them how they can do that?
Yes, so we have a website, cedtechnologies.com. We also have a phone number, and it is on the website. I don't have it off the top of my head.
Well, I actually have it right here, so I will do the work for you. I had everything pulled up. The phone number, I see it 904-281-7935. That's for the Florida office.
Yeah, and our Florida office connects us with all of the other offices. So we're in Connecticut, Maryland, Florida, Ohio. So all along the Eastern Coast, and a whole slew of engineers, a lot of great experts here. So,
well, Alexandra, thank you so much for your time. This is Alexandra Maddox of CED Technologies. I want to mention that CED Technologies is a proud sponsor of FLABOTA, and we thank them so much for their support. Again, we want to thank Trilogy Trial Consultants for their sponsorship of FLABOTA and helping make this show look great with their editing and producing it. And I also want to thank my producer, my partner in crime, Mitch Chester, for all his help in putting this show together. Until next time, this is the FLABOTA podcast hosted by the Fort Lauderdale chapter. I'm FLABOTA President Jeff Adelman. Be well, everyone.